Many people who live in Israel who have U.S. portfolios often wonder what's going to happen to their assets in America when they pass away. My name is Doug Goldstein with Profile Investment Services. Unfortunately, this is an issue that we deal with quite a bit. Just to be very clear, the way that we deal with it is we deal with actually helping the heirs to transfer the money. We don't give legal advice, we don't give tax advice, but because we're the ones who actually deal with the tachlis, the nuts and bolts, I want to share a few points with you. It's only going to be a few minutes that we're going to talk today, but most people who are living in Israel who have U.S. brokerage or IRA accounts will probably get something out of this presentation, so they can rest assured that if everything is set up properly, then everything will be handled smoothly upon their passing. Basically, today we're going to talk about three types of portfolios. The first one is a joint account. So this is a very common type of account that a husband and wife will have. It's normally called a joint account with rights of survivorship. And what that means is that the two people own the account together. If one of them should pass away, then the other one has the right to all of the assets in that account. There are other types of joint accounts, but the types of account that most people have as what they refer to as a joint account with their brokerage firm are joint accounts with rights of survivorship. How does this get processed? It's a very straightforward process when one person passes away. First of all, we all know that all of the money is going to go to the surviving spouse. How does it get there? Well, we do need some documentation. The first thing is that we need to get a death certificate, and the death certificate has to be in English. So if the deceased is in Israel and the death certificate comes from the Israeli Ministry of the Interior, the Misrat of Panim, you've got to take that to get a proper translation at the U.S. consulate and get something that is going to be called a report of a U.S. citizen death overseas. And that counts as the official death certificate, and that's in English. The next thing is we're going to need an affidavit of domicile. Now, this sounds like a very official document, but all it is you're just saying, my mother or my father or my spouse lived at this address, and you get the form. We give this form to our clients. You fill it in as best as you can. You bring it to a notary to make sure that it's you who's properly signing it, and you'll bring that to us. And the third important document here is what's called a transfer certificate. A transfer certificate is basically a letter that you get from the IRS that says that the deceased did not owe taxes, and therefore this brokerage account or this joint account is able to be released. Otherwise, the bank or the brokerage firm that's holding on to that account is going to say, wait a second, we don't know if we're actually allowed to release the funds to the heirs, so they won't until they get a transfer certificate. To get a transfer certificate, normally you'll just ask your accountant. You'll say, hi, my parent or my spouse or my whoever you're dealing with passed away, and we need a transfer certificate. And the accountant's going to ask you for certain information. Send a letter to the IRS, hopefully within a few months. Sometimes it takes longer. During COVID, it took a lot longer, but since COVID, it's actually sped up quite a bit. It takes a little while, and then you get this letter from the IRS that says that the specific account for which you're looking to get a distribution has been released, and you give that to the brokerage firm, basically to my office if you're one of our clients, along with the affidavit of domicile and the death certificate, and then we'll go ahead to transfer the process. So basically, it's relatively simple because it is a joint account with rights of survivorship. It goes relatively simply, and the normal way that we'll do it is we'll open an individual account, let's say in the name of the surviving spouse, and transfer all of the assets without selling them. We just transfer them from the joint account into the new individual account. So you collect the documents, the death certificate, the affidavit of domicile, and the transfer certificate, and then you turn all that in, and then we go ahead and take care of the process of transferring the assets. All of this is handled through our office in Israel, so you don't have to deal with a lot of overseas companies because the assets for our clients are being held through our firm. Okay, next. Let's say you have an IRA account. An IRA account, an individual retirement account, like other pension accounts and insurance policies, for example, goes by the beneficiary form. When we open an IRA account for a client, we ask him, okay, so this is your name. If you were to pass away, who should inherit your IRA? And you fill out a beneficiary form, and we just follow that form. In this case, we're going to need a death certificate, just like before. We'll also need a transfer certificate. This is that the IRS is saying no tax is due on this account. And we'll need the notarized affidavit of domicile. Once again, none of these are major deals to get. And of course, we will walk you through the process when the time comes. Finally, let's say someone has an individual brokerage account, not a joint account and not an IRA account. It's just an account in your name, John Smith, and then John Smith passes away. So in this case, the assets will be transferred by the will of the deceased. So you need to have a will. And if you didn't write it in English originally, we'll need to have an official translation of that will. A lot of times people will write their will in English, or they'll do the official translation before they die, and that's fine. Then we work with the official English version because that's the only thing we can work with as a U.S. brokerage firm. Then you take that will and you go and you get a probate in Israel. Normally probates in Israel happen relatively quickly. It could be up to 60 days, normally sometimes even quicker. I guess if it's a complicated estate, it could take longer, but our experience has been, and our experience in Israel for decades, has been that the Israeli probate is usually pretty straightforward. And again, the documentation we're going to need is a death certificate in English, a transfer certificate, which again is the letter from the IRS saying that the deceased no longer owes any taxes and this account is free to be distributed, a will, because the will has to say that where the money is going, and the probate, which is the court saying, the Israeli court saying that the money can be transferred. Now, notice I said Israeli court. Because you are living in Israel, even though the account is in America, we will accept the Israeli probate. So you don't need to have two wills. If all you have in America are your brokerage accounts or your IRA accounts, and you're going to write a will, an Israeli will is sufficient as far as we're concerned. Now, I can't comment with other brokerage firms or other companies, but we've been using Israeli wills to pass the assets of our clients for many, many years, and it has not been a problem. The areas where it may become more complicated, and because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an accountant, is if you have real estate outside of Israel. For example, many people are invested in all sorts of real estate deals, or they own their home in America where they used to live and now they're renting it out. In that case, it's important that you identify what those assets are. You seek proper legal and tax advice now, before your heirs are going to need it. Before 120, you should live and be well. And if there are going to be any complications, then deal with them right now. Many times people just deal with this problem by selling the property because they say it's more hassle than it's worth. I'm not recommending selling the property. I'm just letting you know that's a common solution to this problem. So we've spoken about the required documentation, which is, again, not a big deal to get. The death certificate, the affidavit of domicile, and the transfer certificate. We've spoken about joint accounts. If you have a joint account, then everything that's in, when one person dies, then the other one gets all of the assets. An IRA account gets passed by beneficiary. It does not go, there are no joint owners in an IRA, and it does not go by the will. It goes by the beneficiary document that you filled out when you open the account, and by the way, which you can update from time to time. If something changes in your life, a divorce, a new child or something, you can update your beneficiary form. And we spoke about individual accounts, which are transferred based on your will. And again, need all those documents that we mentioned before, the affidavit of domicile, the transfer certificate, and the death certificate. Make sure that you get advice on this. I always tell people that even though I'm not a lawyer, if you're working on your will, while you're still working on it, show us a copy of it, because we deal with these documents on a regular basis, we might see something technically that'll make it easier for your heirs to handle the will. But of course, work with an attorney who's familiar with both the U.S. and the Israeli situation. This all falls into the overall estate planning questions, which you should be dealing with your attorney, your financial advisor, and your accountant. And this discussion has just been the practical side of dealing with moving your money from one place, from one person to another after the first person passes away. So I hope this was useful. If you have any questions or concerns about your own portfolio, feel free to get in touch with us at profile-financial.com. Once again, my name is Doug Goldstein, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Thanks.